Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Aren't you glad I made another pot of coffee?
Yes. That's why I'm having tea. Because that second pot of coffee's been...
I drank that all too.
That's right.
Want to thank all of you so much for the comments and emails and phone calls and all the cards and gifts. Very much appreciated. And it's always wonderful to get cards from friends in the mail.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. So, what are we going to cover today?
Well, I think we would cover TDS syndrome.
TDS? Trump derangement syndrome? What's
No,
that got to do with anything?
Not that TDS. Total dipshittery.
Oh, okay.
That syndrome.
Yeah.
Total dipshittery.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at an article first, and then we're going to look at a much more broader historical context into how Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses are truly total dipshits.
Well, they're not the only ones because you were watching a video this morning. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the link down below because it was a news report, if I understand, about an investigation. Now, Mike has mentioned the 2x2 cult.
Right.
And how they are like the mirror image of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
I think it's an offshoot of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're worldwide. We didn't realize how large of a cult it was.
Well, they make it look like that they're pretty small, but when they show the map in the United States of how many states that this 2x2 cult is in, you're going to realize that they're a lot more far-reaching than just what they're trying to project in this news report. And the thing is, Jehovah's Witnesses, they are a spitting mirror image of your organization, and in particular how it applies to circuit overseers.
See, and the Jehovah's Witnesses will watch a news report like that and think, oh, that's horrible, that's a cult, that's a cult. And they don't realize that they're exactly like Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot of the same beliefs, a lot of the same infrastructure.
The only true religion. So that's why they suffer from TDS, total dumb shittery.
Well, if you get a chance, go watch this because it's interesting what they say, because one of their high-ranking members was just convicted and is going to spend a long time in prison. And guess what? Their CSA problem, systemic CSA problem, it is a sin, not a crime.
Right.
Sound familiar?
See, and that's the whole problem with this TDS syndrome, total dipshittery, is because you'll hear a Christian say, well, we must obey God as ruler rather than man, quoting what Peter said, but yet they forget Romans 13. Be obedient to the superior authorities, because there is no authority except by God, and these authorities are in place to act on behalf of God. So if the authorities deem CSA as a crime and the Christian belief system views it as a sin, then you suffer from TDS because you can't recognize that this is absolutely a contradiction in the thought process. You're holding two opposing opinions, so you suffer from total dipshittery.
Well, it's interesting when they, were talking about this 2x2 cult, they denied that they have a widespread, CSA problem, a systemic problem, and that's exactly like Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh, it's an isolated case. Bad men have infiltrated Jehovah's Witnesses and given us a bad name. It's apostate lies.
Yeah.
You hear these excuses from Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, the 2x2 is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
They don't have a widespread CSA problem.
But isn't it interesting how, for the greater context, they all focus on 14-year-old girls. 14-year-old young girls, but yet when you look at the whole Christian construct of Mary, when she became knocked up by God, was about 14 years old. So they suffer from TDS because they can't make those connections.
Yeah, and a lot even down south here in this country,
Yeah.
the age of consent is 14. So
Yeah, it's TDS, total dipshittery.
another interesting thing that they mentioned in that video about the 2x2 cult is that what would be the equivalent of a circuit overseer, he stays in members' homes for a length of time.
Length of time.
Yeah, and even the one that was, I believe it's the same one that was convicted, was in this home with this family for a month or two.
Well, not only that, like the circuit overseer, after they've served 3 years, they move them to another circuit. Same exact playbook.
And this 2x2 cult, they move them from state to state.
Yep.
Get them away from the area they're in. So, yeah.
TDS.
Very similar. Very similar.
But it's not just that. It's a systemic problem in all Christian-based religions, cults. And this is where I've got a real problem with this, is because you talk to a Christian and they'll say, but where did you get your moral values from? Which, comes from the Bible, but at the same time, they're using that book to hide behind it.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just Christian religions.
No, it's...
Because several of the Middle East religions, Muslims, Islam, they have to arrange marriages with children.
With children, yeah.
You go look at some of these videos and it is so disturbing. This little 9-year-old girl, she's throwing a fit hanging onto her parents. She doesn't want to go with this old, 30, 40-year-old man and be married to him.
But yet, here again, how is that any different than the Abraham story of Sarah being 90-something years old or however old she was, and she couldn't conceive a child, so she hands over her slave girl, an Egyptian slave girl, so that Abraham can have a child through a younger woman, a childbearing age woman.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing, TDS.
Yeah. All right, now we have an article we are going to cover, and it is so infuriating. But I want to thank John very much for sending me the information and the article. And it is from the February 2025 study Watchtower. Forgive those that traumatized us. And warning, this may trigger some of you because, it's normal to be angry, but to stay angry is your choice.
Right.
And the thing is our family, this organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, traumatized us and destroyed our family. Oh, but we're supposed to get over our anger and, okay, oh well, this is what happened.
Well, it's like I've said before. If you can't take what we're doing, then go find someone else that's more palatable for you. Because we're here to help people sort through this stuff. We're not here to get your money through being patrons.
We're not here to tickle people's ears either.
That's right, because this is a real life thing that's going on. Because people have no way out. In a lot of this stuff, the only solution they have now is to take themselves out of society as a way out. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Well, look at Mike and I have been in this community for about 12 years now. There have been so many who have committed suicide.
Yeah.
Because they can't deal with the abuse and the trauma that the Jehovah's Witness cult has heaped on them.
Yeah, and then these total dipshits, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, put out an article basically imitating Jehovah's forgiveness.
Is that the new word of the week? Total dipshits?
Total dipshits.
Yeah.
Well, once we get this done, we're going to go back and walk through Watchtower's history, and we're going to show how this organization is nothing but a bunch of total dipshits.
Now, study article number 7. Like I said, this is the February 2025 Watchtower, and they're going to be studying it, looks like May. in 2025, next summer. But in study article number 7, they're talking about Jehovah's forgiveness, and he wipes clean your sins, and you can get forgiveness, repent and get forgiveness. I have a question. How come Jehovah can't forgive apostates? And if he can forgive everything else, how come he can't forgive apostates?
Well, because they classify it as sinning against the Holy Spirit. Every sortable sin will be forgiven, but sinning against the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
Which, again, is still part of the total dipshittery.
Well, it's interesting because in this article they're talking about friends and family, and many of us have been abused by elders, the child abuse problem, and yet they're wanting us to forgive those that have traumatized us or who have abused us, and forgive these elders. Do you think I can ever forgive the elders for disfellowshipping me and ruining my family when I did nothing wrong?
Other than
not showing up to my judicial hearing?
Well, other than asking questions.
Yeah.
Total dipshittery. Because they can't handle logical questions from logically thinking people.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to read John's email here, when he sent me the link to this article. Howdy, Kim and Mike. Isn't it interesting that the moment the Supreme Court of New York ruled that governing body can be sued directly for child abuse and cover up, all of a sudden we must forgive those that traumatized us and trust Jehovah will provide a more just outcome than we could ever hope to achieve on our own. Total scam to dissuade lawsuits.
Yeah.
Good point, John. Totally agree. Because what JW family now, the elders are going to use this article against them and shut them down, and you don't want to go to the authorities because, little Johnny or Mary was abused. We need to forgive the people who abused us.
Now, I haven't read or seen this article, but I can just imagine somewhere along the line they're going to refer to where Paul states, don't be taking your brothers to court because you suing your brother is altogether a defeat for us.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because the name of the article is Jehovah's Forgiveness. How can you imitate it? And they start out with a story of Denise, some names have been changed, where they were visiting world headquarters, and they had just visited the newly opened world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were in a car accident, and the person that hit them put several of the family members in the hospital and killed the husband. And then it goes on to talk about the driver was charged with manslaughter, and if convicted, he could be in prison. However, the court informed Denise that the outcome of the man's sentencing depended on her testimony. What do you think she did? Well, it wouldn't be in a Watchtower if it wasn't TDS.
That's right.
Because she sat in the courtroom and prepared to address the man who had caused her family so much pain. What did she say? Denise asked the judge to show mercy to the man. When she finished speaking, the judge broke down in tears. He said, "In all my 25 years as a judge, I have never heard anything like this in my courtroom. I never hear the victim's family plead for mercy in behalf of the defendant." What helped Denise to be forgiving? She meditated on Jehovah's forgiveness.
TDS syndrome! Total dipshittery.
Yeah. Jehovah wants us to forgive others just as freely as he's forgiven us. Our families won't forgive us for some supposed sin.
There's a greater context at play here, Kim.
I know.
Believe me. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Now the subheading on paragraph 5, do not ignore your feelings. Getting angry is a reaction, but remaining angry is a choice. But it's very difficult as a human when your family has been destroyed over the shunning and disfellowshipping policy to forgive others. Do you think my mom and I will ever have the same relationship we did when I was a Jehovah's Witness? No, that can't ever be fixed. And it isn't on me. She has called me the tool of Satan.
That's right.
And not to ever contact her again. So how can she forgive me and we have that relationship and try to rebuild the relationship? We can't. So Watchtower, governing body, idiots. Why don't you talk to the Jehovah's Witnesses about forgiving and to not shun family members? Do you think they ever asked us why we were disfellowshipped? No, they never did. Otherwise, they would have found out that we were disfellowshipped just because we didn't show up to our judicial hearing.
Well, you want to know what the real issue is as part of this entire context with TDS, total dipshittery, is that for decades, the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society and their dipshit writers have done nothing but indoctrinate with fear. And that's the same thing that you see in mainstream media at play today. They're indoctrinating with fear. And some of the results of that is now you see young women now going out purposely getting their tubes tied. You see young women shaving their heads bald. You see all of this stuff that's being done, and it's still TDS, total dipshittery, but they're reacting out of the fear that's been implanted by the news media, and Watchtower uses the media of their articles, their books. This is why it's difficult for these people to get rid of the total dipshittery, is because they will not work to get rid of the fear that's been indoctrinated. It's one and the same.
Yeah. Now on page 16 of this magazine, there is a box, a gray box. What if we have been traumatized by someone? We do well to remember that when we forgive someone, we are not condoning that person's actions or allowing him to take advantage of us. Instead, we decide to let go of our resentment and anger. And I let go of my resentment and anger years ago, but it's still like a wound of what happened to us and those who have done this to us.
Well, look at what they're saying. We are not condoning that a person's action or allowing him to take advantage of us. But that's exactly what they did. They took advantage of you because you haven't properly studied the Bible in itself. And what you've done is you've allowed them to tactfully destroy your spiritual value as a human being, and you've allowed them to take advantage of you by saying, well, you need somebody to teach you the Bible because you can't understand it on your own. They're asking forgiveness for something that they did purposefully by making you think you're not smart enough to understand something? Come on, TDS.
Going on with the box. In that way, we do not allow the person who caused us trauma to continue to victimize us.
Yes, they do.
And, I mean, there's just so much that can be said about this. I mean, it's just amazing. And, yeah, we left the organization. We're not trying to go back because we don't want to be traumatized or victimized by this cult anymore. That is our choice. And we do videos not because we're angry, but because we're whistleblowers and we're trying to warn others who want to get involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, because there is no fine print that you sign your contract in blood when you're baptized that you have to leave your non-believing, your non-JW friends and family behind, or if your whole family is in the organization, that if you leave, you lose all of them.
That's right.
So, you know, like I said, there's no disclaimer that you sign a fine print when you get baptized and join this organization. So it's not anger, resentment. It's just we're trying to warn others so that you don't get stabbed with this pain like the rest of us have.
But most people won't listen because they would rather listen to their preacher, even if that's a snake handling cult in the southern part of the United States. The only reason why they're handling poisonous snakes the way they do is because, one of the apostles got bit by a snake and he shook off the snake and he didn't die, and the people said, "You must be a god." Comes right out of this book. And everybody with a logical thinking mind should realize if you get bit by a snake, you're going to get poisoned. But these guys use the Bible and become a snake handling cult thinking that they're gods.
Going on. By letting go of our resentment, we are really giving ourselves a gift. It allows us to heal and move on with our life. And we're so happy that so many that we have known the past 12 years, they've left this community and moved on with their lives. That's the best thing. That makes us very happy. And we appreciate, because years later they'll contact us just to see how we're doing and give us an update on them and their family.
Yeah.
So it's great. We're so glad many can move on.
But you have to also realize in that context that there has to be a place that you can reground yourself. And in a lot of cases, that's Kim and I. Because if we were to leave right now or left 5 years ago, 6 years ago, those that are waking up, who would you have to talk to? Who would you really have to talk to? Somebody that cares about what's happening, what's going on, or would you rather just talk to a YouTuber that is only concerned about taking your money and then taking a trip or a vacation?
Going on. Of course, even when we decide to let go of our resentment and anger, we need never forget that the person is still accountable to Jehovah for what he has done. So does that mean that every single Jehovah Witness that shuns their family members, they're accountable for the pain they have caused their family members? What if their family member committed suicide? They're accountable to that. What about all the pervos in the organization who have abused children? They're accountable for that. You may not contact the authorities and they may not go to jail for that, but according to this, they're still accountable to God.
So how is that forgiving?
It's not really.
If you've forgiven your fellow man, then this implies God has forgiven your perpetrator too. See? TDS, total dipshittery. They don't even recognize what they're saying right here.
Yeah. Thus, in a sense, letting go of our resentment and anger is another way in which we follow the psalmist's inspired advice. Throw your burden on Jehovah. We leave the matter with Jehovah, trusting that he will judge the person who deeply hurt us. And Jehovah judges matters far better than we can, so he will provide a more just outcome than we could ever hope to achieve on our own.
TDS.
Wow.
Total dipshits.
Like I said, this article, it was just like, wow.
Yeah, But there again, there's something behind this, because now that the New York Supreme Court said that you can sue these men, now they're trying to get ahead of the curve so that they're going to stave off any future involvement in the court getting sued for CSA. But this is where these people suffer from total dipshittery, because their members are less likely to sue them than an apostate, somebody that's left and are not beholden to their bullshit.
Now, on page 18, there is another box. 3 steps to forgiveness. Yeah, wait for it. Do not ignore your feelings. See, that's what we're doing. We're not ignoring our feelings. We're acknowledging it to the entire world, our feelings.
How is my angry disposition not my feelings? They are. Because at some point you just totally get fed up with this crap.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to admit, they've got some good advice here, but it's just kind of, you just got to shake your head. It's like, well, they're the ones that caused this. Okay? Like I said, good advice here, but they're the ones that are traumatizing all of us. Under the do not ignore your feelings, we cannot expect our hurt feelings to get better if we ignore them. So that's why we don't ignore them and move on with our lives. We speak out and tell everybody about our feelings, and don't be like us and get involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, because you will lose your friends and family, and it hurts. It really hurts.
And when you do wake up and leave, you're going to be angry, because you're going to realize that at least for us, combined 80 plus years of our lives absolutely wasted. How can you not get angry when you can look back and say, I could have been a professional musician. She could have been a professional whatever she wanted.
So you want to find out how to deal with your feelings?
Oh, enlighten me.
Give yourself time to heal. Ask Jehovah to help you combat resentment. Jehovah, I'm still resentful to the governing body and the hierarchy at Watchtower. All of those idiots and the stupid things they have done and said, and the abuse they have caused.
I'm resentful that you chose him to be shepherds.
Yeah. Now this one, I'm shaking my head and it's like, good Lord, yeah, TDS. Trust Jehovah, not your feelings. Well, didn't they just say, do not ignore your feelings? Trust Jehovah, not your feelings.
Dipshits.
But do not ignore your feelings. Well, how can you do not ignore your feelings?
And then trust them.
It doesn't make sense.
Because if you're just beginning to wake up as a Jehovah's Witness and your feelings are telling you something is grotesquely wrong with this organization, you need to trust your feelings. Because you don't know if that's not the Holy Spirit moving your feelings to recognize this. But no. You'll absolutely shut them down because of what these people have indoctrinated you with. What a contradiction in theology.
Well, since that didn't help us much on dealing with our feelings.
Yeah.
What?
Well, look at what they say. You don't want to have a spirit of independence because it was Satan's spirit of independence that caused Eve to sin. But yet, do you want to be a sheeple your entire life? Do you want to follow what someone else tells you, even if it's wrong? Even if you can do your study and research and say, yep, this book does nothing but indoctrinate with fear, just like the mainstream media does.
So do you want to learn now how to, do you want to hear what they say about creating positive feelings?
No. You know why? Because I've already done that. Go over to my Lane Beaver channel and you'll see there's a stark difference between doing videos there and what's being done here, because over there it's not hurting anybody. Doing this crap, it still hurts people.
Okay, try to see the person as Jehovah sees him. Oh, that's a biggie. Think about it though. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
That's a biggie, because if you go by the God in the Old Testament, then our family would want to stone us and kill us.
Well, let's just go a step further. Try to see them as Jehovah sees them. Can somebody explain to me why Jehovah saw fit to give Satan all the kingdoms on this earth? Can you all understand why and see how Jehovah chose Satan to be the ruler over the earth? Because remember, when Jesus died, he says, the ruler of this earth has no authority over me. How is it that your God Jehovah saw fit to give Satan all this authority? You know how? It's total dipshittery.
Okay, the next point. Ask Jehovah to help you to forgive. Tell the person that you have forgiven him. Okay, Watchtower, how can I tell my mom and JW family that I have forgiven them and don't resent them anymore when they won't even talk to me? Won't even take my phone calls, nothing.
It's because they still suffer from TDS syndrome.
Wow.
Because they've allowed Watchtower to use fear as the control mechanism.
Yeah. And like I said, this article is just it blows the mind. It really does.
Well,
What it does is it messes with your mind
uh-huh.
because it twists it in all these pretzel twisting, TDS, and it's like it doesn't even make sense. It makes sense to the Jehovah's Witnesses because they won't even think about their family that have left. They'll think about, the brother or sister in the hall that said something that hurt their feelings. They'll keep it, very superficial.
It's because they're dealing with that syndrome.
Yeah.
That's connected to fear. So you want to walk through history a little bit?
All right.
All right.
Ready for history.
Let's go back to the Rutherford days. Do you remember this little oldie but goodie? Millions now living will never die. They had to change it to millions now living may never die. Dipshits.
Well, that was from the 20s because we have that book.
Dipshits. See? Now, remember when Rutherford wrote that World War II would surely go into Armageddon? Did that happen? Total dipshittery. Right? Now, do you remember back in the late 60s, they said there's no point in getting an education because you won't be in this system long enough to use that education.
That's us, the 1975 screwed generation. You forgot 1914, though.
Dipshits, I'm getting to that now. Dipshits. Now, remember what they said. The generation of 1914 will not pass away until all these things occur, including the start of the Great Tribulation. Now we have Splain trying to give life support to 1914 in that generation through the over total dipshit. That's what this is. It's total dipshittery because they tried to give life support to the generation that is dead and gone. Now look at what they do. Look at what they're doing now. Like I said before, they have no choice but to become more mainstream like most Christian religions today.
Kinder, gentler.
Kinder, gentler. Now, years ago, decades ago, the worth of a brother was by what? How many hours he put in field service. Now, the worth of a man is checking a box on their time slip. Dipshits. Look at what they did. They even used Paul's words. Don't even say a greeting to such a man. And now what? Now what do? Well, when you see a disfellowship one come in, it's okay to say hi. Dipshittery.
Oh, that reminds me. You know the JW carts that whenever we're going up to do a supply run in Edgewood, we see them in the park?
Yeah.
Well, when I went the other day, their cart was out in front of the park again, and I'm looking around for them. All four of them are sitting in the car.
We gotta get out and save the world because if you don't preach, then God's gonna ask their blood back at your hands. Dipshittery.
You know what? If I would have been able to do that back when I was at JW, I could have been a regular pioneer.
Yeah.
I would have had time to be a regular pioneer.
All anybody's gonna do is pick up any of this literature and look at how they've changed their theology over the years. I mean, even in the old green Bibles, in one of the passages that talks about the divine architect, how is it that they worded it? Because
the master builder.
Yeah, it's the same phraseology that the Masons use. Now you get their new silver sword and even their old black and maroon reference Bible, it's not there. So they took that phraseology out. Dipshits.
Well, you know what else they did to their Bible? Is that scripture, the light gets brighter?
Yeah.
That JWs and elders always throw
New
at you?
light, new light.
They changed it, and it's the same exact wording now as the King James.
Dipshits.
So it doesn't mean, spiritual knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing that when you walk through the Watchtower history, you can see that they do completely suffer from TDS syndrome. Total dipshittery syndrome.
Well, I just thought of another one.
Please, do tell.
Oh, there's so much.
Well, that's the whole point of this.
So much. Okay, so 1984 Bible, like the reference Bible and the maroon and black ones that we grew up with, it used to say in Timothy, if I remember correctly,
That's right,
about apostates being mentally diseased.
mentally diseased.
Well, now in the New Silver Bible and the new ones, it doesn't say that.
Dipshits. See, it's so easy to pick this stuff out, but you have to resonate up here. You have to be willing to open your eyes and see that all of Christianity has these systemic problems. It's not just the CSA problem, but the more that we or archaeologists explore human history, the longer you're going to come to appreciate that man has been on this earth for a very, very, very long time. And if you do your research like we were watching on the Story Channel yesterday, how much of Homer's Iliad is in this book?
And it's interesting because all of those Greek writings, they started as oral traditions.
Yeah.
And they even compared it with the Bible. And a lot of those stories are very similar to the Bible. And even the Viking and Norse, mythologies. It's like, oh my God, they have an Armageddon too. The Ragnarok or something like that.
Okay, how is this really any different, Kim, than the India snake god, the Naga that's got the multiple snake heads? How is that any different than the seven-headed dragon? Dip shittery.
Well,
See,
the Naga gods, yeah. Yeah,
It's
we're
all
big
the
into
same.
archaeology. And when you start watching some of this archaeology and these myths and legends and beliefs all over the world, you see it's like, wow, so similar.
They all have a point of origin. And it's not 6,000 years. It's multiple hundreds of thousands of years.
So since we're talking about archaeology and religious beliefs, I never knew as a JW about the Anunnaki.
Well, yeah.
And what's interesting about that story from ancient Sumer, the ancient Sumerian Anunnaki story, is it's written in stone. So it hasn't been edited.
That's right.
And they talk about the gods and the gods that created us, the Elohim, and how they took some of their DNA and mixed it with a hominid that was here on this planet.
And it's also to include the divine feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. There was male and female.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at that, it's like, wow. And I mean, that's 12 to 15,000 years ago, way before, most religions, 6,000 year timeline.
But look at the driving force behind it. If you've got multiple gods, multiple centers of worship, then the money that people have is being divided among all these multiple gods, all these multiple churches, synagogues, temples. So what you do is you convince everybody that everything is a false god, false entity, and just boil it down to one so that all the money flows in one direction.
And isn't it interesting that even clear back to those stone tablets and all through history, their gods have always promised to come back. The Anunnaki have promised to come back. The Mayans and Incas and Aztecs, they all had their gods, Quetzalcoatl, whatever his name was, the feathered, the feathered serpent, Viracocha. They've all promised to come back. And isn't it interesting that Viracocha looks just like Jesus with the full beard and mustache?
And in one way or another, they all promise perfect health. In one way or another, they all promise perfect health and putting an end to death. All of them. But there's a point of origin. And that's what you need to go back and find out. So that when another cult like the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, Jehovah's Witnesses, or the 2x2 cult, you can escape the fear that they're trying to perpetrate.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But yet, hey, continue to think I'm angry. That's fine. But you need to recognize how it's resonating with a whole lot more other people.
Well, the thing is when you think critically and
Yeah.
excuse me, start doing this research, you see that they're all the same and they have no control over you when you can see
Right.
the pattern of manipulation. That's the biggie, is you have to see the pattern, of manipulation and indoctrination.
Yeah.
And like we've mentioned so many times, it's based on fear.
Yeah. It's false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. So I think that's all we're going to cover with this article.
Because honestly, with Watchtower's TDS syndrome, total dipshittery, it's a never-ending topic.
True.
It's a never-ending topic. I can pick any article, any paragraph out of any one of these books, magazines, whatever. Well, let's go back to that Awake magazine when they had all the picture of all those old people and it said the generation that will not pass away. You can literally now go back and put a date to when all those people in that Awake magazine died. Dipshits.
Yeah, in fact, we have that picture.
Dipshittery right there. See? So all you got to do is go back and look and put a name and a date to when all them people died. They're gone. They're not coming back. Dipshits.
So we hope you have a wonderful week, and thank you for watching.
Just remember, the word of the week now is total dipshittery.
TDS.
TDS does not mean Trump derangement syndrome any longer. It's total dipshittery.
And that never ends.
That never ends.
That never ends.
It never ends.
Yeah. Yep. Every new magazine, every new broadcast,
Yep.
Every new annual meeting, every new convention, everything.
Yep. They can't escape this. That's the whole problem. They can't escape it.
Well, that's why it's good for us to do videos and talk about it, because we will say things that Jehovah's Witnesses will not. They may be thinking it, but they're not going to say anything out loud.
Yep.
So thank you for watching, and we appreciate all of you and very much, and we love you.
Bye.
Bye.